They don't get bigger or better than John Winston Howard as Prime Minister for Australia. And I'm pleased to say he's joining us again during the election campaign for his take on the day's news, which, of course, today is all about interest rates. And Mr Howard joins us now from Sydney. Mr Howard, g'day.
Hello there, Paul. Good to be with you again.
All right, elephant in the room, interest rates. What's your read on what the economic impacts and the election impacts are?
Well, my read is that interest rates at the moment are the lowest in the living memory of anybody. There's not a person alive in Australia now who's enjoyed lower interest rates. So we've got to have a sense of perspective. They're incredibly low compared with when you, I don't know when you bought your first home, but I'll bet interest rates were probably 7, 8, 9, 10% at least, perhaps even more. The cash rate has now gone to what, 0.35%. Now, they're very low at present, partly because of the emergency levels they had to be brought down to due to the pandemic. Now, obviously, they can't remain at that level indefinitely. And apart from anything else, people who deposit their money with a bank expect some kind of return. So what happened today was entirely predictable. It doesn't represent any failure of economic management. I mean, if the Labor Party's running around saying, oh, terrible, 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 well, it wasn't terrible having a 0.1% interest rate yesterday, but now it's terrible, terrible, because it's gone from a record low to an almost record low. So let's have a sense of proportion.
Unsurprisingly, some of the media is trying to pretend it's Armageddon and it's all part of their pro-Albo agenda. But what do you think about the reality of what happened today?
Well, of course, if you are a saver, you don't mind interest rates going up a little bit. If you're a borrower, of course you mind, but let's keep a sense of balance and proportion. It was inevitable that some upward movement would occur because they've been at these emergency low levels. Now, that has happened. It was entirely predictable, and we have to keep a sense of proportion, and dismisses arrant electioneering any claim by the Labor Party that this represents a failure of economic management by the government.
And let's talk about H.Y. Albo for a second. It is extraordinary that you have a bloke standing to be Prime Minister who promises not just to spend every dollar the current government is, but on top of it, $70 billion more and counting over the next 4 years. That means he will drive up inflation. He does not have a solution for interest rates either.
Well, he obviously has some kind of magic solution that has eluded any leader of the government in the past, and which he's stubbornly refusing to tell the Australian people what it is. The truth is we have a big debt at the moment, a big government debt, and that is because we had to pump a lot of money into the economy following the government effectively closing the economy down with the full support of the Labor Party, incidentally, in order to counter the pandemic. Now, plainly having done that, the government had an obligation to pump money back into the economy to get it back on its feet. And as the Reserve Bank Governor noted in his statement today, Australia is coming out of the economic downturn remarkably well and better than most comparable countries. So the Labor Party can't have it both ways, or three ways. They can't support pumping all this extra money into the economy, acknowledge that we have to do something about the pandemic, and then turn around and squeal and yell economic mismanagement just when you see the eventual return, the beginning of a return of interest rates to more normal levels. It defies any kind of logic to have those sort of positions.
Now, I think at the heart of the Labor Party's campaign and the media's coverage is that they think people are A, stupid, and 2, have no memory that goes back longer than 2 days. I think they are underestimating the intelligence of adults who haven't come down in the last shower.
Well, never underestimate the common sense of the Australian people. I always had a great respect for it. I thought I could understand what people wanted most of the time. A lot of the time I got it right. some of the time I got it wrong. And when I got it wrong, it wasn't the fault of the Australian people, it was my fault. And I think what you're seeing at the moment is a massive underestimation by the Labor Party of the maturity of the Australian people. People know that interest rates are at record lows. They know the levels are emergency levels, largely, not entirely, brought on by the pandemic. And they, much and all as some will not like it, they will accept that interest rates have to return to a more normal level. And when you think that it's gone to the cash rate has gone by 25 basis points to 0.35 from 0.10, that is not a crisis.
We talked to your former Deputy Prime Minister, John Anderson, on the show a couple of nights ago about these fake independents, and he has got a great point. These, of course, are very rich, well-educated places where they pore over every word of a mobile phone contract, but they have no issue hiring an MP who has bugger all detail bigger than a bumper sticker.
I call these people anti-Liberal groupies. They're anti-Liberal. And why are they anti-Liberal? Because they're not running candidates in any Labor-held seats. Why aren't they running a candidate against Anthony Albanese? His seat is as safe for the Labor Party as the seat of North Sydney or Wentworth, perhaps even safer, is for the Liberal Party. Why aren't they running a candidate against Tanya Plibersek? Why? Because they only want to defeat Liberals. And if any of those candidates are successful, it will take one seat away from the Liberal Party and effectively give it to the Labor Party. I mean, I hope any disgruntled Liberal, and there are always disgruntled supporters of any political party at any time, think that by voting for one of these anti-Liberal groupies, they will end up bringing about some correction to the Liberal government still in office. Forget it. If you're successful in that desire, you'll knock the Liberal government out of power, because this is a very tight election. I'm not going to pretend to you or any of your viewers that it isn't close. It's very close. I'm not going to insult their intelligence by saying, oh, the Liberal Party is going to romp it in and win in a landslide. I'd like to believe that, but I don't, because it's not going to happen. It's going to be very tight. And therefore, anybody who thinks that supporting an anti-Liberal independent will deliver some short-term rebuke and you can still have a Liberal government is daydreaming.
And conversely, what is your appeal to the people who are thinking about a protest vote against the government via, say, Pauline Hanson or Clive Palmer? What do you say to the Conservative voters about wwhy they need to, at the very least, put the coalition at number 2, preferably 1?
Well, I would say the same thing, in the end, you can only form a government in this country led by either the coalition or the Labor Party. And anything that reduces the number of coalition seats helps the Labor Party. Correspondingly, anything that reduces the number of Labor seats helps the coalition. There's no sort of, paradise in between. That is a mythology. If you support an anti-Liberal groupie in one of these hitherto safe Liberal seats, you are taking one off our list and giving it to the Labor Party, and that's a net loss of 2.
As always, an honour, Mr. Howe. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you.